The coffee splashed over the edge of the mug as Jack Garrison grabbed it too quickly, cursing under his breath while trying to wipe the hot liquid from his worn jeans with a thin paper napkin. The cafe was busier than he'd expected for a Tuesday afternoon, but he'd needed to get out of his apartment before the walls closed in on him completely. "Daddy, can I have another cookie?" 6-year-old Emma looked up at him with hopeful brown eyes, already halfway through the chocolate chip cookie he'd splurged on. "Not today, sweetie." Jack managed to smile, though the weight of his dwindling bank account pressed on his shoulders. "We need to save room for dinner." Emma's small shoulders slumped briefly before she returned to savoring each bite of her remaining cookie. Jack watched her, his heart swelling with love despite the constant worry that had become his companion since Emily had walked out on them 2 years ago. Single fatherhood wasn't what he'd planned, but Emma was everything to him. He took another sip of his coffee, mentally calculating how many extra hours he could pick up at the construction site next week. The promotion he'd been promised kept getting delayed, and the child support payments from Emily were as inconsistent as her visits with Emma. Jack Garrison," the voice froze him mid-sip. It was a voice he hadn't heard in nearly a decade but would recognize anywhere. He turned slowly, knowing before he even saw her who would be standing there, Olivia Hayes, his college sweetheart, the woman he'd once thought he'd spend his life with. "Olivia," he said, standing awkwardly, nearly knocking over his chair. Wow, it's been a long time." She looked exactly as he remembered, yet completely different. Her auburn hair was shorter now, falling in soft waves around her face instead of the long curls he used to run his fingers through. Her green eyes still crinkled at the corners when she smiled, but there was something more refined about her now. The casual jeans and university sweatshirts had been replaced by an elegant cream blouse and tailored black pants that screamed success. "Almost 8 years," she said softly, her eyes darting to Emma, who was watching their exchange with curious eyes. "Is this your daughter?" Jack nodded, placing a protective hand on Emma's shoulder. "This is Emma. Emma, this is Miss Hayes. She's an old friend of Daddy's." "Hello," Emma said politely, offering a cookie-crumbed smile. "It's lovely to meet you, Emma." Olivia's smile was genuine as she crouched down to Emma's level. "That cookie looks delicious." "It is. Daddy says we can't have another one, though." Emma's honesty made Jack wince slightly. Olivia laughed, the sound bringing back a flood of memories Jack had tried to suppress for years. "Well, Daddies are usually right about these things." She straightened up, and Jack noticed the designer watch on her wrist, the subtle diamond studs in her ears. Whatever Olivia had been doing since they'd broken up, it had clearly been profitable. "Would you like to join us?" The words left his mouth before he could stop them. Part of him hoped she'd decline, saving him the embarrassment of his obvious financial struggles compared to her apparent success. To his surprise, she nodded. "I'd love to, if you don't mind." As she pulled out a chair, Jack noticed several people in the cafe watching them, or rather, watching her. He suddenly felt self-conscious about his worn work boots and the paint-stained t-shirt he hadn't had time to change out of after his shift. "So, what brings you to this cafe?" he asked, trying to sound casual. Olivia settled into her chair. "I just moved back to town a few weeks ago. I'm opening a new branch of my company here." "Your company?" Jack couldn't hide his surprise. She nodded, a slight blush coloring her cheeks. "Hayes Innovations. We develop sustainable technology solutions for corporate infrastructure." Jack blinked. The name sounded familiar. He'd seen it in business news. Something about a multi-million-dollar company revolutionizing green building practices. "You're that Hayes." Olivia's laugh was self-deprecating. "Guilty as charged. It's been a wild ride these past few years. Daddy builds things too." Emma piped up proudly. "He's the bestest builder. He made me a dollhouse all by himself." Jack felt his face grow hot. "I work construction," he clarified, not meeting Olivia's eyes. "Nothing like what you're doing, obviously. Don't sell yourself short, Jack." "You were always amazing with your hands." There was no condescension in her voice, only warmth that made him finally look up at her. "I'd love to see that dollhouse sometime. I bet it's incredible." Before Jack could respond, his phone buzzed. It was his boss, asking if he could come in early tomorrow to cover for another worker. More hours meant more money, but also meant finding someone to watch Emma before school. "Everything okay?" Olivia asked, noticing his frown. "Yeah, just work." He typed a quick reply, agreeing to the extra hours and making a mental note to call his neighbor to see if she could help with Emma. "Daddy, can we go to the park after?" Emma asked, oblivious to his concerns. "Not today, Em. We need to get home so I can make dinner and you can finish your homework." He saw the disappointment on her face and felt the familiar guilt that came with having to say no to his daughter far too often. "I should probably let you two get going," Olivia said, sensing his dilemma. She reached into her purse and pulled out a business card, sliding it across the table. "But I'd love to catch up properly sometime. My number's on there." Jack took the card, noticing the embossed logo and heavy stock paper. "Thanks. It was good seeing you, Liv." The old nickname slipped out automatically. Something flickered in her eyes at the sound of it. "You too, Jack, and it was wonderful meeting you, Emma." As they watched Olivia walk out of the cafe, Emma tugged on his sleeve. "She's pretty, Daddy." "Yes," Jack agreed quietly, pocketing the business card. "She is." He couldn't have known that Olivia Hayes, CEO of a $1 million company, had just spent $300 on a coffee she never even ordered, just for the chance to talk to him again. 3 days passed before Jack found the courage to text Olivia. He drafted and deleted a dozen messages, each sounding more awkward than the last. Finally, after Emma was tucked in bed, he sent a simple note. "It was good seeing you the other day. Maybe we could grab coffee sometime." Jack, to his surprise, her response came within minutes. "I'd love that. Are you free for lunch tomorrow? My treat." The offer made him uncomfortable. He wasn't used to someone else paying his way, but his curiosity about Olivia's life outweighed his pride. They arranged to meet at a small bistro downtown during his lunch break. When he arrived, dressed in his cleanest work clothes, Olivia was already waiting at a table. She wore a simple blue dress that somehow looked more expensive than his entire wardrobe. "I wasn't sure you'd actually call," she said as he sat down across from her. Jack ran a hand through his hair, freshly washed but still damp from his hurried shower at the construction site. "I almost didn't. It's strange seeing you again after all this time. Good strange or bad strange?" She asked, a hint of vulnerability in her question. "Good," he admitted. "Definitely good." Over lunch, which was indeed her treat, despite his protests, they began the careful dance of getting to know each other again. Jack learned that, after they'd broken up, and she'd left for her internship in Silicon Valley, Olivia had stumbled upon a breakthrough in renewable energy systems for commercial buildings. What started as a small startup grew exponentially, and now Hayes Innovations was at the forefront of green technology. "But what about you?" she asked, picking at her salad. "Tell me about Emma," and, she hesitated, "is there a Mrs. Garrison in the picture?" Jack shook his head. There was. "Emily and I got married about 7 years ago, right after I finished my apprenticeship. Emma came along a year later, but by the time she was 4, Emily decided family life wasn't for her. The divorce was finalized 2 years ago." "I'm sorry," Olivia said, and she seemed to genuinely mean it. Jack shrugged. "It is what it is. Emma's the best thing that ever happened to me, even if things are challenging sometimes." He didn't elaborate on just how challenging the second job he'd picked up on weekends, the constant struggle to make ends meet, the guilt of not being able to give his daughter everything she deserved. "She seems wonderful," Olivia smiled. "She has your eyes." "And my stubbornness," Jack chuckled. "You should see her when she doesn't get her way." "I'd like to," Olivia said softly, then quickly added, "I mean, I'd love to get to know her, if that's okay with you." The sincerity in her voice caught Jack off guard. "I'd like that too," he found himself saying. As they finished their meal, Olivia mentioned she was looking for contractors to help renovate her new office space downtown. "It's a historical building that needs significant updating while maintaining its character. Your boss's company is actually one of the ones we're considering." Mackenzie Construction, Jack was surprised. They were a good company, but hardly the high-end firm he'd expect someone like Olivia to hire. She nodded. "I've heard they have excellent craftsmen." The way she looked at him made it clear she knew exactly who she was talking about. "Olivia, you don't need to." "I'm not," she interrupted. This isn't charity, Jack. I need the best, and from what I remember, that's you. I'd like you to come see the space, give your professional opinion. As a consultant, paid for your time, of course. He wanted to refuse, to tell her he didn't need her help, but the truth was he did need the money and if it was legitimate work. Okay, he agreed finally. When? This weekend, Saturday morning. Jack hesitated, thinking of Emma. I'd have to bring Emma along. My usual weekend sitter is out of town. Even better, Olivia smiled. I hear there's an excellent ice cream shop near the building. As he returned to work that afternoon, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just taken an unexpected turn. What he didn't know was just how right he was. Saturday morning arrived with Emma bouncing excitedly around their small apartment. The prospect of ice cream had her dressed and ready an hour early, her hair neatly brushed and her favorite sneakers already laced. Is Miss Hayes your girlfriend, Daddy? She asked as they drove downtown. Jack nearly swerved. What? No, honey, she's just an old friend who needs some help with a building. Grandma says you need a girlfriend, Emma informed him matter-of-factly. She says you work too hard and you need someone to make you smile more. Jack made a mental note to have a talk with his mother about discussing his love life in front of his daughter. Grandma needs to mind her own business, he muttered, then softened his tone. I smile plenty, especially when I'm with you. But you smile different when you talk about Miss Hayes, Emma observed with the unnerving perception of a child. Your eyes get all crinkly. Before Jack could formulate a response, they arrived at the address Olivia had sent him. The building was an old warehouse, brick and timber with large windows and classic industrial lines. Despite its age, Jack could immediately see its potential. Olivia was waiting outside, casual in jeans and a simple t-shirt, so different from her business attire that Jack almost didn't recognize her. She waved as they approached, her smile bright. Good morning, thanks for coming. She crouched down to Emma's level. And thank you for letting me borrow your dad for a little while, Emma. I promise we'll get that ice cream afterward. Emma nodded solemnly. Daddy says you're not his girlfriend. Jack wanted the ground to swallow him whole. Emma, but Olivia just laughed. Your dad's right. We're old friends who are just getting to know each other again. But you could be his girlfriend, Emma pressed, ignoring Jack's mortification. He smiles different when he talks about you. Emma, that's enough, Jack said firmly, his face burning. Let's go look at this building, shall we? Olivia's eyes lingered on his for a moment, something unreadable in them, before she nodded and led them inside. The interior was spacious, with exposed brick walls and wooden beams. It needed work, a lot of it, but Jack could immediately see what had attracted Olivia to the space. What do you think? She asked as Emma explored the open area, her footsteps echoing. It's got great bones, Jack said, professional mode kicking in as he examined the structure. But it's going to need significant updates to the electrical, plumbing, probably HVAC too. Olivia nodded, watching him as he moved around the space, pointing out issues and opportunities. For the next hour, he walked her through what would be needed, occasionally stopping to check on Emma, who had brought a book and was reading contentedly in a patch of sunlight from one of the tall windows. You know your stuff, Olivia commented as he finished explaining how they could maintain the original woodwork while updating the infrastructure. Jack shrugged. I should. I've been doing this since I was 18. You could be running your own company by now, she observed. Maybe in another life, he said quietly. When Emma came along, stability became more important than ambition. Olivia's expression softened. You're a wonderful father, Jack. I try, he said, suddenly uncomfortable with her praise. Some days are better than others. Ice cream time. Emma called from across the room, closing her book with a decisive snap. Jack checked his watch, surprised at how quickly the time had passed. I guess it is. The ice cream shop was only a block away, a charming little place with homemade flavors and colorful decor. Emma deliberated seriously over her choices before selecting strawberry with rainbow sprinkles. Jack opted for vanilla, and Olivia chose chocolate hazelnut. They sat at a small table outside, enjoying the warm spring day. Jack watched as Olivia engaged Emma in conversation about her school, her friends, and her favorite books, genuinely interested in what his daughter had to say. Emma, normally shy with strangers, bloomed under the attention, chatting animatedly. "She likes you," Jack said quietly when Emma went inside to use the restroom. "The feeling is mutual," Olivia replied, wiping a chocolate smudge from her lip. "She's amazing, Jack. Smart, funny kind. She's definitely your daughter." The compliment warmed him. "Thank you for today." For the consultation opportunity, the ice cream, all of it. Olivia hesitated, then reached across the table, her hand resting lightly on his. "I have a confession to make. I didn't just happen to be in that cafe the other day." Jack frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" "I've been back in town for 2 months, not a few weeks." She looked embarrassed now. "I saw you at a hardware store about a month ago. You were helping Emma pick out paint colors and I couldn't bring myself to approach you then. You were looking for me." Jack was trying to process what she was saying. Olivia nodded, pulling her hand back. "When I decided to open an office here, part of me hoped I'd run into you. I just didn't expect it to take so long or to finally get the courage in a coffee shop." She smiled ruefully. "I didn't know about Emma or your divorce. I've thought about you over the years, more than I probably should have." Jack's heart was pounding now. "Liv, I'm not expecting anything," she said quickly. "I know our lives are completely different now. But when I saw you again, all those old feelings came rushing back, and I thought maybe." "Daddy, can I have another scoop?" Emma's return interrupted whatever Olivia had been about to say. Jack glanced at his daughter, then back at Olivia, who was now studiously examining her napkin. "One more small scoop," he agreed, and Emma skipped back inside, leaving them alone again. "You were saying," he prompted gently. Olivia looked up, vulnerability clear in her green eyes. "I thought maybe we could see if there's still something there." "But I understand if you're not interested, or if it's too complicated with Emma, or I am," Jack interrupted. "Interested, I mean." He took a deep breath. "But you're right, my life is complicated. I work 2 jobs to make ends meet. I have a 6-year-old who depends on me for everything, and I can barely afford ice cream some weeks, let alone dinner at the kind of places you probably go to." "Jack," Olivia's voice was soft but firm, "do you think I care about any of that?" "You should," he said bluntly. "You're successful, beautiful, probably have men lining up around the block. Why would you want to complicate your life with a struggling single dad?" "Because none of those hypothetical men are you," she said simply. "Because in the 8 years since we broke up, I've never met anyone who made me feel the way you did, the way you still do. Because success means nothing if you don't have someone to share it with." Emma returned with her second scoop, effectively ending their conversation, but Jack's mind was racing. As they walked back to their cars, Emma skipping ahead, Olivia turned to him. "Think about it," she said. "No pressure, but if you decide you're interested in seeing where this might go, call me." That night, after Emma was asleep, Jack sat on his worn couch, Olivia's business card in his hand. The rational part of his brain told him to let it go. Their worlds were too different now, it would never work. But his heart remembered the way she'd listened to Emma, how she'd looked at him like he was still the man she'd loved all those years ago, not just a struggling construction worker barely making ends meet. Before he could talk himself out of it, he texted her. "Dinner next Friday? I'll cook. Nothing fancy, but it'll be edible. Emma will be at my mom's for the night." Her response came almost immediately. "I'd love that. Should I bring wine?" As he replied affirmatively, a weight he hadn't realized he'd been carrying seemed to lift from his shoulders. Whatever happened next, he was ready to find out. The next few weeks passed in a blur of quiet dinners, weekend outings with Emma, and conversations that stretched late into the night. Jack learned that despite her success, Olivia was still the down-to-earth woman he'd fallen in love with in college. She preferred pizza to fancy restaurants, laughed at his terrible jokes, and had a way of making both him and Emma feel like they were the most important people in the world. For her part, Olivia fit seamlessly into their lives. She helped Emma with her science project, never showed up empty-handed for dinner, and never once made Jack feel inadequate about his modest apartment or financial situation. One evening, as they sat on his balcony after Emma had gone to bed, Olivia brought up the renovation project again. "I'd like to hire Mackenzie Construction officially," she said, "with the stipulation that you're the lead on the project." Jack frowned. "Olivia, you don't have to do that." I'm fine with my current position. This isn't charity, she insisted. I've seen your work, I've talked to your boss who, by the way, says you're the best craftsman he's ever worked with, and I want the best for my company's flagship office. But no buts, she cut him off. This is business, Jack. The fact that I happen to be falling in love with you again is entirely separate. Jack froze. You're what? Olivia's eyes widened as if she hadn't meant to say that out loud. Well, I suppose the cat's out of the bag now. She took a deep breath. Yes, Jack. I'm falling in love with you, again, or maybe I never really stopped in the first place. He reached for her hand, entwining their fingers. That's convenient, he said softly, because I'm pretty sure I'm falling in love with you too. Their first kiss in 8 years was everything he remembered and so much more tender, passionate, filled with all the words they hadn't said yet. When they finally pulled apart, Olivia rested her forehead against his. So about that job offer, Jack laughed. You don't give up, do you? Not when I know what I want, she said, her eyes serious. And right now I want 2 things. For you to take the job because you deserve it, and for you to kiss me again because I've waited 8 years for this. He was happy to oblige on the second count, but still hesitated on the first. Let me think about the job. I don't want to mix business and whatever this is becoming. Olivia nodded, understanding in her eyes. Fair enough, but promise me you'll at least consider it, not for me but for yourself and for Emma. The mention of his daughter made Jack pause. Emma had grown increasingly attached to Olivia over the past weeks, always asking when she would visit next, showing off new accomplishments for her approval. If things didn't work out between them. What are you thinking about? Olivia asked, noting his sudden silence. Emma, he admitted. She adores you, I need to be careful for her sake. Olivia squeezed his hand. I understand, she's your priority as she should be. I would never want to do anything to hurt her or you. We can take this as slow as you need to. The sincerity in her voice reassured him. This wasn't a passing fancy for either of them. It was a second chance neither had expected, but both desperately wanted to get right. 2 months later, Jack found himself in an unfamiliar position, financially secure for the first time in years. He had accepted Olivia's job offer, and the promotion came with a substantial raise. He was still careful with money. Old habits died hard, but the constant anxiety about making ends meet had finally eased. More importantly, his relationship with Olivia had deepened into something real and lasting. She had become a fixture in their lives, often joining them for dinner, helping Emma with homework, or simply being there to listen when Jack needed to talk. On a warm summer evening, Jack invited Olivia over for a special dinner. Emma was spending the night with his mother, giving them a rare evening alone. He'd prepared her favorite meal and even splurged on a bottle of champagne. What's the occasion? Olivia asked as they sat down to eat. Jack smiled, suddenly nervous. Do I need an occasion to cook for my girlfriend? The word still felt new on his tongue, but it fit. Olivia was his girlfriend, his partner, and if he was brave enough tonight, hopefully something more. After dinner, they moved to the small balcony, where Jack had strung up fairy lights that reflected in Olivia's eyes as she looked at him questioningly. Jack, is everything okay? You seem nervous. He took a deep breath. I am nervous, he reached for her hand. These past few months have been incredible. Having you back in my life, seeing how wonderful you are with Emma, realizing that what I felt for you in college was just the beginning of how much I could love you. It's been a revelation. Olivia's eyes grew misty. Jack. Let me finish before I lose my nerve, he said with a shaky laugh. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. This isn't the ring you deserve. I'll get you that one day, I promise, but it's the one my grandmother gave me before she died. She told me to save it for when I found the love of my life again. Olivia gasped as he opened the box to reveal a simple but elegant vintage ring, a small diamond set in white gold. I'm not asking you to marry me tonight, Jack clarified. That would be too soon, especially for Emma. But I am asking if you'll consider it someday. If you'll let me love you the way I should have all those years ago, the way I want to for the rest of our lives. Tears were streaming down Olivia's face now. Yes, she whispered. Yes to someday. Yes to loving you and Emma. Yes to all of it. As he slipped the ring onto her finger, a perfect fit, like she had always been meant to wear it, Jack felt a sense of completion he hadn't experienced in years. Perhaps ever. I love you, Olivia Hayes, he said, drawing her close. And I love you, Jack Garrison, she replied, sealing the promise with a kiss. 6 months later, on a crisp fall day, Jack stood in a sunlit garden, Emma beside him in a pretty blue dress as Olivia walked toward them. The intimate ceremony was attended only by close family and friends, exactly as they had wanted. As Olivia reached him, radiant in a simple white dress, she squeezed his hand. "Ready for our next chapter," she whispered. Jack looked at his daughter, who was beaming up at them both, then back at the woman who had returned to his life when he least expected but most needed her. "More than ready," he replied, his heart full to bursting. When they were pronounced husband and wife, and Emma threw her arms around both of them in an exuberant hug, Jack knew with absolute certainty that this was what happiness felt like. Not the success of his newly launched custom furniture business, backed by his wife's company. Not the beautiful new home they would move into next month, but this his family, complete at last. Later, as they danced under the stars, Olivia leaned her head against his chest. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't seen you in that hardware store, if I hadn't gotten the courage to approach you in that cafe?" Jack pulled her closer. "I think we would have found each other anyway. Some things are just meant to be, no matter how long they take." "Like us?" she smiled up at him. "Like us," he agreed, kissing her softly as Emma danced around them, giggling. The struggling single dad and the millionaire CEO, on paper, they made no sense. In reality, they were perfect. As the night drew to a close, Jack looked around at the life he now had, a life he had never imagined possible just a year ago, and felt nothing but gratitude. For second chances, for unexpected reunions, for the love that had always been there, waiting patiently to be rediscovered. And as Olivia caught his eye across the room, her smile as bright as the future they would build together, Jack knew one thing with absolute certainty. Sometimes, the best love stories are the ones that get a second chapter.